One autumn evening in the small German town of Winden, the artist Michael Kahnwald, after leaving a farewell letter with precise instructions to read it on November 4th, 2019, voluntarily takes his own life. On November 4th, his teenage son, Jonas, wakes up from a nightmare, while his mother, Hannah, copes with the loss in her own way by having an affair with local police officer Ulrich Nielsen. The boy heads to school, where he hasn't been in months due to being in rehabilitation after his father's death, and learns about the disappearance of his classmate, Eric. At the same time, his grandmother Inez tries to open her deceased son's letter but hesitates. Instead, she listens to a radio show about the nuclear power plant that was built in their town back in 1953. Meanwhile, Eric's parents come to the police station, convinced the detectives aren't doing enough to find their son. Ulrich's partner, Charlotte, assures them they are doing everything they can. Volunteers have searched the entire town and the surrounding forest, but so far, to no avail. Ulrich reminds them that the boy had run away before, so maybe it's not that serious. But this time, it's been 13 days already. At the same time, Jonas witnesses his ex-girlfriend Martha kissing his friend Bartosz. But then the school principal and Martha's mother, Katerina, enters the scene, wanting to discuss Eric's disappearance as well. Yet no one has seen him, as if the boy vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, at the Forest Hotel, its owner Regina Tiedemann receives notice of an urgent payment due. But she has no money, as no one wants to vacation in a town where a child has gone missing. At school, Bartosz reminds Jonas that the missing Eric was involved in dealing substances, and his stash is likely hidden in the cave where he used to keep them. Later that day, Ulrich visits his elderly parents, who are still struggling with the disappearance of their younger son Mads, 33 years ago. The case with Eric is eerily similar to that tragedy. At the Winden retirement home, one of the residents, Helga, whose ear is disfigured from an old injury, suddenly mutters to himself that it will happen again. Meanwhile, Eric wakes up in a strange bunker. At that time, a group of teenagers meets in the forest to search the cave for Eric's hidden treasures. Magnus and Martha are forced to bring their little brother Mikkel, but he promises he won't be a problem. Meanwhile, Michael's mother finally opens her son's letter at the designated hour. The teenagers descend toward the cave, but frightened by strange sounds coming from deep inside, they flee. Suddenly, Jonas hears his father's voice and sees him covered in mud. The boy runs away in panic. Once back in town, the group realizes that Mikkel is missing. Sometime later, the police arrive at the scene. They begin searching for the boy, but it's all in vain. Unexpectedly, in another part of the forest, the police find the body of a boy, partially covered in leaves, with burned-out eyes. Ulrich rushes to the site. He breaks down over the remains, until he notices the boy is wearing completely different clothes. He realizes it isn't Mikkel. Meanwhile, Eric is strapped to a chair, and a strange metallic half-mask is placed on his head. The next day, the police conclude that the boy is approximately 11 years old and died from strange burns around the eyes. His ear canals are also damaged, likely from a sharp external sound or sudden impact. The particles in the boy's body appear to be scrambled. Ulrich continues his search for his son. Soon, he discovers a metal door deep in the cave, marked with a radiation symbol. At the same time, his parents discuss their missing grandson. After all, the same thing happened to their younger son 33 years ago, and that's very strange. The same thoughts haunt Mikkel's mother and sister. Meanwhile, experts determine that the discovered body belongs neither to Eric nor to Mikkel. His clothing is covered in some kind of red clay, and the clothes themselves seem to be from the 1980s. A nearby cassette player is also from that era. Around the boy's neck hangs a Pfennig coin minted in 1986. Ulrich returns and reports the discovery of a door in the cave, requesting a warrant to search the nuclear power plant built above it. At the same time, the plant director orders Eric's father, Jürgen, who works at the facility, to get rid of the barrels of spent fuel that could compromise them. That same evening, a strange man arrives at the Forest Hotel, asking to rent a room. Later, the walls of his room are shown to be covered with clippings and diagrams dedicated to the disappearance of boys. The man pulls out a book about time travel written by H.G. Tannhaus and some kind of peculiar device. Meanwhile, Charlotte tells Ulrich that the warrant to search the plant has been denied. Ulrich is visibly distressed and ignores Hannah's persistent calls. That day, Jonas enters his father's room for the first time. Lying on the floor, he suddenly notices a gap in the ceiling and discovers a hidden compartment containing a map of the caves. At the same time, Ulrich tries to sneak into the power plant to search another part of the cave, but the director orders security not to let the officer in. Returning to the station, he finds Hannah waiting for him. He asks her to leave him alone, saying that he has no time for affairs right now. Jonas, meanwhile, studies the map and finds strange markings indicating passage lines. Ulrich examines the evidence from the sites connected to Eric's disappearance and finds tire tracks matching those of his father, Jürgen's van. The officer heads to Jurgen's garage and finds a bag of illegal substances. Jurgen confesses that he and his son were selling drugs, but insists he had nothing to do with the boy's disappearance. That night, Eric's body, with burned-out eyes, is dragged through the forest by a hooded stranger. Jurgen, meanwhile, drives yellow barrels away from the nuclear plant. Later that night, the lights begin to flicker all over town, and the man staying at the hotel corrects the headline of a newspaper clipping. It once asked, "Where is Mikkel?" Now it reads, "When is Mikkel?" Mikkel emerges from the cave and runs toward the town. At dawn, he approaches his house, puzzled by the strange vehicles parked in the yard. He's met by a young man who insists he lives there and that his name is Ulrich. Mikkel lowers his gaze and reads the date on a newspaper, November 5th, 1986. He enters the house where he's greeted by the mother of the missing Mads. Thinking her son has returned, she rushes toward Mikkel. Startled, the boy runs away. Mikkel goes to school, bewildered by the environment. No one seems to notice him. In the hallway, he bumps into his own mother, Katarina, but he doesn't recognize the teenage girl. That same morning, Claudia Tiedemann arrives at the nuclear plant to assume her new position as director. At the gate, she is greeted by Helge Doppler, who is thrilled about her appointment and gives her a book. Meanwhile, an older police officer responds to a call from the fields. A mysterious and simultaneous livestock death occurred during the night, and no one can explain it. Returning to the station, the officer finds Mikkel there, confused and unsure where to go. Upon hearing that Mikkel's father is named Ulrich, the officer gets irritated, thinking it's a bad joke. After all, he's in an open conflict with the teenage Ulrich. The officer leaves and Mikkel, left alone in the office, reads through numerous newspaper clippings about Mads' disappearance, realizing that Mads is his uncle. Soon after, Nurse Inez arrives and takes the boy to the hospital. Meanwhile, the officer confronts Ulrich, demanding the truth, but the boy reminds him that he still hasn't found his brother, so he has no right to lecture anyone. Meanwhile, Mikkel is examined at the hospital. Since no serious injuries are found, he is kept for observation. Inez immediately feels sympathy for the boy and tries to comfort him. Claudia, while reviewing the station's internal records, notices inconsistencies and demands a report from the former director. He, however, asks her not to disturb the existing order. At the same time, an expert examining the dead sheep finds the cause of death: sudden cardiac arrest in all of them, along with simultaneously ruptured eardrums. The former plant director takes Claudia to the entrance of the caves and gives her the key to a bunker. Mikkel, meanwhile, confesses to Inez that he came from the future. At that moment, Claudia discovers a whole storage of yellow barrels marked with radiation symbols. Meanwhile, the old police officer returns to the field where the dead sheep were found. Suddenly, birds begin falling from the sky. The man takes shelter in his car while lights across the town flicker once more. At the same time, Mikkel runs to the cave, trying to find a way back home. In the future, his father Ulrich also heads into the cave to break open the iron door he discovered earlier. Though separated by time, father and son seem to sense each other's presence. Ulrich even hears Mikkel calling for help, but they cannot meet. At the same time, clockmaker Tannhaus begins constructing a strange mechanism. Meanwhile, in 2019, Jonas continues studying his father's maps and finds a symbol marking a passage. That same day, Charlotte remembers a camera set up along the road and retrieves its memory card. At the same time, Jonas sets off toward the cave. Charlotte brings a dead bird to the expert, and while it is being examined, she suddenly recalls that similar events happened 33 years ago. Missing children and dying birds. Somehow, it's all connected. But how? Back at the station, she asks to expand the timeline in the investigation of the dead boy. Ulrich learns that the warrant to search the nuclear plant was never approved. Charlotte reviews footage from the roadside camera and discovers that around the time Mikkel disappeared, her husband, psychotherapist Peter, drove past in his car. She questions him about where he was that day, but he insists he was at his office. Charlotte then drives to Peter's parents' old cabin in the woods and notices red clay on the road. At that moment, the expert calls to report that the birds died the same way as the sheep: heart failure and torn auditory canals. The spots on their bodies indicate radiation exposure, yet there's no sign of radiation in the area. Charlotte searches the grounds and discovers an old bunker in the soil, but it's empty, no signs of anyone having been there. On the way back, realizing she won't make it in time to pick up their younger daughter from school, she calls her husband and asks him to do it. At the same time, she tries to get him to confess something, but he remains silent. Meanwhile, their daughter, Elizabeth, tired of waiting, decides to walk home by herself. Charlotte is called to the nuclear plant, where Ulrich has been detained after climbing over the fence in an attempt to search the grounds. She picks him up, and he vents his frustration, saying no one is doing anything. At the same time, Peter calls to report that Elizabeth has gone missing. Her mother rushes to search for her and finds the girl's hat on a path. The police begin the search, but then Elizabeth suddenly returns home. Her relieved parents hug her tightly as she explains she met a strange man who gave her a watch and said his name was Noah. When Charlotte opens the lid, she finds an engraving for Charlotte. That night, Helga suddenly declares that he must stop Noah. However, the next morning, another boy goes missing. The town grows restless. Charlotte interrogates her own daughter, who describes Noah as a man in a large hat. Charlotte once again asks her husband where he was when Mikkel disappeared, but he keeps insisting he was at the office. She shows him a photo of his car on the road, but even that doesn't make him confess. Meanwhile, at the Forest Hotel, the unknown man informs Regina that he will be away for a few days and asks her to deliver a box to Jonas. Later, Jonas and Bartosz meet up to play video games. Suddenly, Bartosz reveals that he found out who Eric's dealer was and that he has a meeting set with Noah tonight. Back in 1986, a priest comes to visit Mikkel in the hospital and introduces himself as Noah. He tries to talk to the boy about God, but Mikkel is convinced religion is brainwashing. Later, Ines is told that social services will soon come to take Mikkel, and for now, he'll be placed in a foster home. In the present, Ulrich confesses that he wanted to become a police officer after his brother went missing. He swore never to stoop to the level of the old detective, and now he's a pathetic man who can't even find his own son. Charlotte tells him that a year isn't exactly 365 days. Every 33 years, things reset, a cycle called the solar-lunar cycle. Her grandfather, the clockmaker Tannhaus, was obsessed with this theory. And since childhood, she suspected something was wrong in Winden. Now she's sure everything repeats itself every 33 years. Meanwhile, the man from the hotel approaches Jonas as he sits by his father's grave. He says he knew the man and is grateful for what he taught him. Back in 1986, Hanna sees Mikkel sitting on a hospital bench and strikes up a conversation. Mikkel likes her and tells her about his favorite magic tricks, even confessing that he came from the future. Meanwhile, the man from the hotel enters the cave while Jonas heads to school, where Martha is rehearsing her role in a play. She ignores a call from Bartosz, who had planned to go to the meeting with Noah. Jonas admits to her that he had been in a psychiatric clinic. She kisses him. At the same time, Bartosz meets with the priest, the same Noah who visited Mikkel in 1986. That evening, Jonas receives the package from the hotel guest. Inside, he finds a lamp, a Geiger counter, and a letter from his father. In it, Michael writes about the mysteries of time. That same night, the hotel guest visits clockmaker Tannhaus and asks to talk with him about time. The next morning, a group of volunteers and police officers begin another round of searches around town, looking for traces of the missing children. Charlotte is convinced that no one can just vanish into thin air, unaware that Mikkel's photo is hanging on the wall of the school where he now blends in among his peers. Jonas asks his mother to tell him how she met his father. She recalls it happened in a hospital and that the boy was special. Meanwhile, Ulrich reopens the case of his brother Mads' disappearance and realizes that his mother lied about their father being home that night. Jonas suddenly discovers a new note on his map, instructing him to follow the signal from the Geiger counter. Ulrich returns home and questions his father about the night Mads disappeared, asking where exactly he was, because he clearly remembers that his father came home very late. The old man is offended. To be suspected of murdering his own son and grandson is outrageous. Suddenly, Ulrich's mother jumps in to defend him. She recalls a childhood fight between the boys when Mads fell onto a glass table and cut himself. He still had a scar on his chin, and yes, she knew her husband was cheating on her. Meanwhile, Jonas packs the lamp and other essentials into his backpack and heads into the cave. That evening, Katarina calls into Winden's radio station and says there's a killer walking among them. Her child could be behind any door. The town is rotting from the inside. Meanwhile, Jonas ventures deeper into the cave and enters a narrow stone passage marked by a red cord. He follows the cord. At the same time, in the bunker, Ulrich's father and Charlotte's husband meet, noting that there are only 19 minutes left until the scheduled event. Jonas reaches the final loop where the thread ends. He switches on the Geiger counter that was sent to him, follows the signal, and soon finds a metal door with the inscription Sic mundus creatus est, thus the world was created. Jonas opens it and pushes through a narrow corridor ahead. At the same moment, across all timelines in Winden, the lights begin to flicker. In 2019, Ulrich flips through an old photo album and suddenly notices his brother's t-shirt. Jonas finally finds his way out of the cave and ends up on rain-soaked streets. He hides under a bus stop shelter and sees a missing persons poster. It's for Mads. Just then, a car pulls up nearby. Inside are his young grandfather and teenage mother. Hannah offers him a ride, saying it's late, but Jonas declines, realizing exactly who they are. Back in 2019, Ulrich visits the morgue and sees that the dead boy is wearing the exact same t-shirt his brother used to wear and has the same scar on his chin from the glass accident. The next morning in 1986, Jonas wakes up in an old watchtower in the forest and heads into town. Meanwhile, in 2019, Ulrich visits the medical examiner to ask whether a boy could be preserved for 33 years in a frozen state. She assures him it's impossible. Back in the past, Jonas arrives at the school where staff confirm that it's November 9, 1986, but no one has heard of Michael and Nurse Ines has no children. In 2019, Ulrich begins seriously considering the possibility that the dead boy they found is his brother Mads. He recalls Charlotte's story about the 33-year cycle of rebirth. In the case files, he finds an old notebook written by the retired detective, questioning why Helga Doppler took the long road home through the forest on the day Mads disappeared. Meanwhile, Charlotte finally receives the warrant to search the nuclear plant, and the police head out. Back in 1986, the police officer meets Jonas and offers him a ride home. Jonas makes up a story about injuring his hand and needing to go to the hospital. The officer offers to take him there, and Jonas has no choice but to agree. In parallel, Ulrich calls Charlotte to ask about her father-in-law, who was once involved in the investigation of Mads' disappearance, but Charlotte knows nothing about it. Her father-in-law is in a nursing home with dementia and couldn't possibly be linked to Mikkel's disappearance. But Ulrich is convinced that Helga is tied to the disappearances in the past. Meanwhile, in 1986, the police officer questions Jonas about his parents. Jonas improvises and says his mother works at the power plant. The officer is intrigued by Jonas's headphones. He's never seen anything like them and decides to take the road through the forest. On that very same forest road, 33 years later, Charlotte is walking. She arrives at the metal gate where the former plant director once brought Claudia when she discovered the old barrels of nuclear waste. In the past, the officer drops Jonas off at the hospital. In the present, Charlotte enters the cave and finds a chipped fragment of yellow paint. She ventures deeper and soon reaches a metal door. Meanwhile, Ulrich visits elderly Helgi, who suddenly becomes terrified and starts yelling that he can change the past. In 1986, Jonas steps out into the courtyard and sees Mikkel and Ines sitting on a bench. Suddenly, the man from the Forest Hotel calls out to him. Jonas doesn't understand what's happening and thinks he's losing his mind, but the man assures him that everything is real. Mikkel is indeed his father, Ulrich is his grandfather, and Martha his aunt. Jonas decides he must bring Mikkel back home, but the man reminds him if he does that, Jonas himself will never be born, and his role is far more significant than he realizes. Meanwhile, in 2019, Ulrich confides in Charlotte that he can't stop thinking about the question, why did Helgi take a different route home that day? Back in 1986, Jonas continues watching Mikkel and witnesses his encounter with Hannah, which finally convinces him to leave the boy in the past. In 2019, Ulrich visits his mother to talk about his brother, but she says she always wanted to believe Mads was alive and doing well. Ulrich doesn't have the heart to tell her what he discovered. The woman recalls how shortly before Mads disappeared, she saw a priest arguing with another man by the road, and today she saw that same man again. She couldn't be mistaken. He had an injured ear and looked exactly the same as he did 33 years ago. At the same time, Helga descends into the bunker behind his old house. Charlotte receives old blueprints that reveal the cave tunnels may run directly beneath Helga's cabin. She calls her husband, but Peter says he knew nothing about his father being questioned in 1986. She wonders why Helga kept the old house and whether he lived there during the car accident. Without answers, she heads to the station and descends into the bunker. Meanwhile, Jonas makes his way back through the tunnel just as old Helga escapes from the nursing home again. Charlotte finds a scrap of children's wallpaper inside the bunker. Jonas returns to his time and tells his mother that his father loved her very much. Then he goes to his father's room and burns the letter. At the same time, Ulrich searches Helga's room and finds Tannhaus's book about time travel with a pfennig on a string used as a bookmark, just like the one his missing brother wore. He spots the old man walking away and follows him, recording a message for Charlotte. It's not about who took the children, but when they were taken. Ulrich follows the old man into the cave. In 1986, Helga carries another child's corpse out of the bunker while Noah wipes away the remaining blood and writes a date on the wall, November 9, 1953. On that very day, young Helga is hurrying home when he sees a police officer arrive at the nuclear plant construction site. Workers have discovered 2 child corpses buried in a pile of sand, dressed in strange clothing. Meanwhile, the man from the hotel and clockmaker Tannhaus talk about time and the Einstein-Rosen bridge, also known as a wormhole. A hole in the space-time continuum that allows for time travel, just like Ulrich is doing now in the cave. But Tannhaus believes Einstein and Rosen missed something. This tunnel connects 3 dimensions, the future, the present, and the past. In 1953, Helgi tells his father about the found bodies, and the man immediately drives to the construction site. The police examine the bodies, unable to explain the burns. Around the boys' necks hang coins minted in 1986, but the strangest part is their clothing. Made in China. One of the boys is clearly Asian, and the other has a tattoo on his arm, which defies all reason. Meanwhile, Ulrich emerges from the cave. Young Helge plays by his father's cabin and discovers the empty bunker. Back in 2019, Tannhaus is surprised to see his book in the hands of the man from the hotel. Only 500 copies were ever printed. He confirms his belief. Every 33 years, everything repeats. The number 33 appears often in religion. Christ was 33 when he died. He performed 33 miracles. Dante described 33 circles in purgatory and paradise, and so on. And in that age, the reign of the Antichrist is said to begin. Meanwhile, in 1953, Helge is cornered by two bullies, but they're scared off by Ulrich. He asks the boy if he's seen an old man in pajamas, but Helge says he hasn't seen anyone. Ulrich continues down the road when a car suddenly stops beside him. A woman and a boy get out, asking for directions to the house that, in the future, belongs to Ulrich. The shocked man realizes it's his grandmother and his father. He panics and runs. Soon he stumbles into Tannhaus's little shop and shows him the book on time travel, the very one Tannhaus hasn't written yet. Naturally, the clockmaker doesn't recognize it. Ulrich struggles to accept that it's truly 1953. Two girls enter the shop and mention the children's bodies found at the construction site. Ulrich runs off, forgetting his jacket. He rushes to the police station, demanding to see the bodies, believing one of them might be his missing son. But when they describe the children, Ulrich realizes Mikkel is not among them. He inquires about Helga, but they don't understand. There is no old man, only a little boy by that name. Meanwhile, in the future, the man from the hotel confides in Tannhaus that he's obsessed with time. He wants to understand who or what can truly change it. Are people free in their desires, or does everything repeat because it must? Tannhaus explains that the relationship between cause and effect is complicated. As long as the tunnel exists, everything is connected. And not only does the past affect the future can also influence the past. Back in 1953, Ulrich finds young Helge outside his house looking at dead birds. Suddenly, he realizes that if he kills the boy now, he'll destroy the future evil Helge will cause. That means he can change things. Terrified, Helge runs, but Ulrich chases him down near the forest cabin and hits him in the head with a rock, disfiguring his ear. Later, Helga's mother becomes worried and starts searching for her son, but he's nowhere to be found. Ulrich hides the boy's body in the bunker and leaves. We jump forward many years to the same bunker. Photos of people whose lives are deeply intertwined cover the walls. Mikkel becomes Michael and ends up as the father to a boy who was older than him when he disappeared. In 2019, the man from the hotel convinces Tannhaus that the theories are real. He says he's from the future, though he's also been in the tunnels in 1986. Now he asks Tannhaus to repair the device that opens the tunnel, letting people travel 33 years forward or back. A couple of months ago, an incident at the nuclear plant caused an energy surge. That surge created the tunnel. This device will close it. The man says he's seen the future and knows what's coming. He must do everything right, and Tannhaus will help him. The clockmaker inspects the machine. Back in 1953, Tannhaus finds the jacket Ulrich left behind and discovers a mobile phone in the pocket. The screen lights up at his touch, startling and fascinating him. Meanwhile, Helge's father goes to the police, demanding they do whatever it takes to find his son, even if it means halting the construction of the nuclear plant. Helge's mother, meanwhile, confesses to Pastor Noah. She admits the boy was not a wanted child and that his father is not her husband. Noah comforts her and encourages her to pray. The police officer drives out to inspect Helga's home and sees a bloodied Ulrich walking along the road. He orders him to stop, but Ulrich runs. He nearly reaches the cave when the officer catches and arrests him. Ulrich protests, saying he changed the past and the children should be safe. Helge is dead and won't be able to kill again. But in reality, the boy survived and regains consciousness in the bunker. At that moment, Tannhaus's mysterious machine begins to activate. Meanwhile, in 1986, Claudia returns to the cave with the barrels and suddenly finds a dog she lost as a child near the cave entrance. She drives to the former director of the nuclear power plant and demands to know what really happened during the recent incident. But he insists the malfunction was minor. Supposedly, a gas line failed, leading to a small explosion. People were lucky. Only a portion of radioactive material escaped. The barrels were then moved to a safe location. However, Claudia does not consider that place safe. Meanwhile, the Helge from 2019 finds his younger self in 1986, but walks away without approaching him. The police officer, having waited in vain for Helge's interrogation, drives to the forest cabin, but Helge is hiding. At the plant, a young man arrives looking for work as a metalworker. Claudia tells him to come back the next day. At the same time in the bunker, Noah and Helge are setting up a strange machine in the center of the room. Helgi doesn't want to be part of it and doesn't understand why God would want this. Noah explains that hell is horrible and everyone who glimpses it longs for the light and for God. Then he suddenly admits, there is no God, only chaos, and people are all wicked and treacherous. He, Noah, is building the ark. The time machine will be that ark. It will change everything for the better. Meanwhile, in 2019, Charlotte listens to Ulrich's message again, but still has no idea where her partner has gone. Martha tries to contact Jonas, but he doesn't answer her calls or messages. At Bartosz's house, an elderly woman arrives unexpectedly and introduces herself as his grandmother, Claudia. The boy is stunned. He thought she'd been dead for years. Claudia admits she wasn't the best mother and that it's understandable why no one told him she was still alive. She says goodbye, asks him to give a photo to his mother, and confesses she would change many things if she could. At the same time, Hannah, angry that Ulrich left her, threatens the plant director, demanding he destroy the policeman's life or she will expose his old secret. That evening, Jonas finds Martha waiting for him outside his house. She asks him to explain his behavior and kisses him, but knowing she is his aunt, Jonas walks away. The plant director instructs the police officer to gather every possible file on Ulrich. He promises that soon the barrels will be returned to their place and it will all be over. Meanwhile, Regina goes to clean the room of the Forest Hotel guest and freezes, seeing the walls covered with clippings, photos, and diagrams related to the missing children of Winden. That night, Tannhaus's machine activates once again. Bartosz meets Noah on the road again. He confirms that everything the man said has come true and agrees to his demands. In 1986, Claudia brings him to the metal door and he opens it. In 2019, the man from the hotel finds the yellow barrels inside vans parked in a lot. The 1953 version of Tannhaus is trying to figure out how to charge Ulrich's phone. Then an older Claudia walks into his workshop and shows him blueprints for a time machine, asking him to build it. Meanwhile, in 2019, Charlotte's husband Peter arrives at Helgi's bunker and prays for peace. Suddenly, a portal opens and a boy's body with burned-out eyes falls through. Peter tries to help, but the child is dead. Pinned to his chest is a school ID with the name Mads. Peter immediately calls the boy's father, whose son disappeared 33 years ago. The man arrives and breaks down in tears over his son's body when the older Claudia enters and promises to explain everything. But first, the body must be placed somewhere it will be found. Elsewhere, Jonas has another nightmare, but refuses to take his medication. Charlotte finds out that her father-in-law, the elderly Helge, has gone missing. That same day, Jonas goes to see his grandmother, Inez, to talk about his father. She gives him a letter from Michael, the same one he already burned. Inez tells him she always knew who her Mikkel truly was, but she didn't know he would end his own life. Jonas is stunned. Now he has another grandmother, the school principal, Katerina. Her husband is sleeping with his mother, and he kissed his own aunt, and Inez did nothing to stop it. But Inez reminds him, we are not gods. She remembers how Mikkel used to show her magic tricks. Meanwhile, in 1953, Ulrich is brought to the police station, where a case is opened against him, despite his claims that he was trying to save the children. But it seems Helge survived, since nothing has changed. Elsewhere in 2019, the man from the hotel visits Tannhaus and finds 2 time machines. The clockmaker confesses that he built the second one himself back in 1953, following the blueprints given to him by an old woman. Yet the 2 devices differ, as if one is the beginning and the other the end of the same thing. The phone Ulrich left behind helped him back then, but the machine only truly activated now, showing the interaction between past and future. The man from the hotel inserts a vial of cesium into his machine, the fuel source. Tannhaus realizes this is what creates the black hole and asks about the future, but the man replies that he hopes tomorrow it will be different. Meanwhile, Charlotte calls Peter and asks for the exact date when his father Helge was abducted. When he tells her, she calculates it was exactly 66 years ago. Back in 1986, Helge encounters his older self from 2019 outside their old home. The elder Helge begs him to stop, warning that Noah is using him. He is not the chosen one, and he won't rid the world of evil. He is the evil. Frightened, Helge, 1986, drives away. The old man tells himself he must be stopped. Meanwhile, in 2019, Jonas says goodbye to his mother, promising that everything will be okay. Peter tells Ulrich's father that Charlotte has been asking questions about Helge, but the old man says it will all end soon. Mads will be saved. Claudia predicted everything. She wrote it down in her book. Back in 1986, Noah tells Helge that once a stranger came to them looking like he'd been through a war. That man said nothing in the world is pointless. Only now does Noah understand the horrors humans endure aren't meaningless. Pain shaped Helge into who he is, but now pain has no power over him. the next one will be Jonas. At that moment, social services arrive for Mikkel, but Inez suddenly announces that she's ready to adopt the boy, and Jonas arrives in 1986. Meanwhile, Charlotte reads old newspapers from 1953 and finds a story about Helga's disappearance and a photo of the suspect. She recognizes Ulrich. At that same time, Ulrich is being beaten in custody, still refusing to say where Helga is. Jonas enters the hospital and finds Noah sitting beside Mikkel's bed. He tries to ask something, but faints. He wakes up in the 1986 version of the bunker. Hearing footsteps behind the door, he sees the man from the hotel, who tells him not to be afraid. He explains that Jonas has become a test subject in the time machine experiments. The tunnel is beneath the bunker, and when opened, the energy flows through this room. The machine amplifies it. The man reminds Jonas about the letter and expresses surprise that Jonas hasn't figured it out yet. After all, only he himself could have given that letter to himself. He is Jonas from the future, and he cannot let Jonas go, because that would change his own fate. He would no longer be able to destroy the time rift. Jonas too leaves. That evening, Helge, 1986, is driving home when another car crashes into his. He survives. Stepping into the rain, he sees the corpse of the other driver, not realizing it's his older self from 33 years in the future. Charlotte reads about the accident as Peter summons her to the forest cabin. That same night, Noah meets with Bartosz and explains that the infinite cycle is about to begin. The adult Jonas will destroy the rift, not realizing he is the one who will create it. He thinks he's a savior, but Claudia lied. He's just a pawn in the game. There are two opposing sides, both trying to control time travel, the light and the dark. Noah claims to be on the side of light. Claudia represents the darkness. And Jonas, he's just a puppet. It will be up to Bartosz to restore order. At the same time, the adult Jonas makes his way into the cave and activates his device. The machine begins to hum, generating a glowing hemispherical field around him. Across all timelines in Winden, the lights flicker and snow begins to fall. In 1953, a terrified Helga suddenly sees a window open in his bunker. Through it, he sees Jonas in 1986. The boys reach out to each other, and in an instant, the loop swaps their places. Helge is thrown into Jonas's place, and Jonas finds himself in the bunker, surrounded by photos on the walls. Seeing images of himself and the others, Jonas bolts outside and finds himself in a post-apocalyptic world. Abandoned cars are scattered everywhere. The buildings lie in ruins. Signs warning of radiation hazards are plastered across the landscape. Suddenly, a truck appears on the road. Armed people jump out and order Jonas to raise his hands. As he tries to ask where he is, they knock him out with a single blow saying, "Welcome to the future." The show is so unpredictable, it could easily carry the tagline, "Don't be surprised if your son is your father." Genres are blended in such a way that, at times, you have no idea what's coming next. And that's what makes it so valuable. This series is a must-watch for any fan of science fiction.